Alrighty, we're going to look at an app called Notability on your iPad. So if you would, go ahead and find the Notability app. Right here is my Notability app, but if you can't find it, you can swipe to the left on the iPad and start typing in Notability, and it should pop up. And I'm going to go ahead and open that app. And most likely when you get into the app, you're going to get into a screen that looks something like this. This is your library screen, and here's where you organize all your notes. And you can organize them within folders and name your notes differently. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the library, but let me just go over a couple things. Over here are the actual folders, and I have a bigger folder which is referred to as a category, and then a smaller folder within that which is referred to as a subject. And so you can see different subjects, and if you want to play around with moving these around and creating them, it's pretty straightforward. There's the plus button right here. If I hit plus, it'll allow you to create subjects and categories. If you hit the edit, you can start moving these categories around. So I can move math out of that homework folder and move something else into it. And then when you close that folder, notice it just drops into that bigger folder. If you want to delete, there's the delete button. And when you go into these folders, you'll see the notes that are within those folders, and you can even rename those notes just by clicking there. And say you don't like the name of that note, and you want to name math example from board example or whatever. And this is telling you what folder it's in, and that's how you can rename a folder, is up here. So if I don't like the name of the folder, I could rename that. Just a lot of different options here that you can look at when you get the time. The plus sign deals with something else. So once you hit plus, or once you hit done, it's done with the editing. Now, I do want to mention before I go into creating a note, you have this all button and unfiled. All lets you see all of the notes in Notability, every note that you've created. And unfiled lets you see the ones that are not in folders. So it's just a way to kind of search for things a little bit quicker if you want to see all the notes. Or I'd really encourage you to make folders though and organize things and keep it as organized as you can. So there's that for you. Some of the next things that I want to take a look at is actually how to create a note and what's the use of Notability. Notability is an app that we use to annotate documents, to write on documents. And you can create a blank note. I'm going to go ahead and hit the create button. And somebody probably asking, how did I get here? Well, let me show you. When you get into a new note, you have this button up here in the top left of the screen. That's your library button. If you hit that again, I'll show you how I created a new note. A new note you create by just hitting this create button, which is in the upper right hand corner of the app. So if you click that create button, you create a new note. And again, you can go back to the library. It's pretty simple. Hit that create new note, and then you can go back and forth between the note and the library. Now, a lot of times your teacher is going to have you bring in a document, and it works really well with PDF documents, but your teachers will also use Office documents like Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. But most of your teachers are going to use a PDF document that they're going to store on the Moodle page. So they'd have that PDF document on the Moodle page, and you would pull that into Notability from Moodle, and I'll demonstrate that in just a few minutes. But a couple of things. So let's just go through a couple of basic things on Notability. So at the very top, you have your toolbar. Underneath the toolbar, you have the name of the document, which right now it's called Note 2 September 2, but I'm going to change it. I'm just going to say Practice. Okay, you can name it whatever you want. And once you hit enter, you've got a new name. And now I want to go through the toolbar. Again, we're already familiar with the library button. If you go back to library, you see now it's named Practice, so I can go back into that note. I don't have to create a new one again. This button right here is the export button. This allows you to export the note. We usually export as an email or Google Drive. There's other options, Dropbox, things like that. But I usually use Google Drive or email. So if I click email, I can email the document, and it's going to ask you a couple questions like what format. Most of the time you're going to do PDF. You might use a Notability note if you have recordings attached to it. Notice the paper and recordings are off, but if you do a recording, like a voice recording, you want to turn that off, and you're going to want to actually export it as a Notability note. The other way that we can send this is to Google Drive and Dropbox, which are cloud storage places where you store your files, and it backs it up to the internet and keeps it safe for you so you can access it anywhere. So if I go to Google Drive, you notice mine's attached to Google Drive, and I could send it to a specific folder in my Google Drive. So maybe I want to choose mathematics, and in that folder all my folders would come up. I might choose geometry, and then I would just export to geometry. And the reason that Google Drive is so important, and I'm again going to probably have PDF chosen, is because Google Drive is the way you're going to upload it to Moodle. So when you have Notability, you're going to, again, hit this export button, go into Google Drive, pick your folder, and export it to Google Drive. And once you click export, it's going to ask you to send. And then once you send it to Google Drive, it's saved in your Google Drive space, which you have 5 gigabytes worth. And then you can, when you go to Moodle, you can grab it from Google Drive to upload it to the internet. So that's the export button. The next button is the undo button. Pretty self-explanatory. It undoes anything you do in your document. And then we come to our 5 most important tools. The first tool is the text tool. So if you click text tool, it's pretty straightforward. If you click somewhere, you're going to be able to type. So I can start typing in a document. Notice down here at the bottom of the screen, you've got different options for your text. You can change the font. So if you want to change the font, or you want to change the size of it, or you can even change the color. And so I'm going to leave it red, and I'll put something that makes sense. We'll just say math is really neat, and so are the math teachers, just for example. Okay, got to put something that's fairly accurate down. Don't want any propaganda in here. The next thing that we get into is, and again, you can play around with the text, is there's one other way to mess around with the text, and that's you can put your finger anywhere on the document, and if you hold it for more than a second, you're going to get this add text box. And then you can type in text in a specific location in the document. And I really like this because you can resize the text box, you can make it smaller, make it bigger. And then there's this little piece of, it looks like a little piece of tape. You can actually take that little piece of tape and move it around. And that really comes in handy. So if you choose off of the text box and you click the text box again, you'll get these formatting options. Like you can cut, copy, delete it, or you can change the paper of the text box. And so maybe you want to choose pink paper and you want it to be graph paper. And so you can do that, and then you can resize it, and you can have a little, now it looks like a sticky note almost. But again, you can play around with those things, and anytime you select out of the text box and select it again, you'll get those options. The next tool, Notability, is the writing tool. I'll go ahead and click on that. Now the one thing I haven't talked about yet is when you select between the text tool and the writing tool, how you scroll up and down the paper is going to change. When the text tool is selected, it just takes 1 finger to scroll up and down. But when you choose the pen tool, it takes 2 fingers to scroll up and down, because now 1 finger becomes, so I'm going to zoom back out, 1 finger is actually writing. So if you move 1 finger, it's not going to move up and down the document, it's actually going to write on the document. So now I have my pen chosen, and if you click the pen button again, you're going to get all these options. You can change the color. I can make it a fine point pen. I can change it to red. And then you just write on the document. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to scroll up and get myself some more paper. The next one's highlighting. Pretty self-explanatory. It's a highlighter. If you click it again, you'll get other options for the highlighter. Next one's the eraser. Like the eraser, you just swipe over an object and it erases the object. So I'll scroll back up. See how simple it is to erase. Now it doesn't erase text box. If you want to erase the text box, you have to choose the text tool, choose the text box, or go back where your typing is and put your cursor and then start deleting. So you have to delete the old-fashioned way with the backspace button. The next button is the cut button. Let's say you have some writing or an object. You can cut it. You circle around the object. It creates a lasso, and then you just move the object. And pretty straightforward, and you can change the different style, things like that. I want to go back to the writing tool because this one has a lot of other things that you can do with it. And I want to kind of finish up here. When you choose the writing tool, there are some buttons down here at the bottom of the screen that go along with the writing tool. There's this zoom button and there's this hand button. I'll talk about the hand button first. If you choose the hand button, if you click it, it gives you this gray space down here at the bottom. If you drag this up with the 3 lines, so I just drag it, then you can actually put your hand on the iPad and write. So anywhere the gray is, your hand can touch the iPad screen and you can actually write. So that's kind of cool. If you click this other one, that's the zoom tool. And what you'll get is you'll get the zoom box. And down here at the bottom, you get the writing tools at the top right here above, and it shows you where you're zoomed in at. Now you can touch anywhere on the screen and it'll zoom in that area. So I can just pick up spot, zoom in, make it a little bit larger, move it around. And what's really nice about this is now you can write at the bottom of your iPad screen, and it allows you to write in really small spaces. So you could be annotating a document your teacher gave you. So if she had a problem, I could go here and and then I could, solve an equation or do some kind of science problem. So it's really nice because this allows you to annotate a worksheet, for example. So that's that zoom button, and you have the same tools there. You got the highlighter, you got the eraser, but now you erase down here at the bottom of the screen. And notice as I'm erasing at the bottom of the screen and writing at the bottom of the screen, it's putting it into that zoomed in box. So that's pretty nice to have, and you just click on that to get rid of it. The next tool here is the voice recorder. Pretty self-explanatory. If you click it, you can start voice recording, and so you can see, and I can play that back. So see that, how that works. And over here, if you click this button right here, you can replay it, delete it if you want. If you click this button right here, it'll show you all your recordings, and you just swipe it to delete it or click at it. Last three tools here are the plus, the wrench, and the paper button. Click the plus. This allows you to bring in media, stickies, web clip. You can bring something in from the web, a photo. The wrench button is your settings. This is kind of nice though because you can choose different types of paper. I can change the color of the paper. I can change it to graph paper or lined paper. Maybe I don't like that. It's a little too weird for my taste, but maybe you like purple polka dots. I don't know. You can change it to graph paper, bigger line paper, or just plain paper. So that's kind of nice to have. And then this last one's really handy because if you get into larger documents, the more pages you add, you can start to scroll through thumbnails. And you notice you got an X button and you got a plus button. The X button obviously is going to delete it. So if you click X, it'll ask if you want to clear the page or delete it. So I can clear the page. The plus button will allow you to add a page above or below. And this really comes in handy because if you get a bunch of pages here, because you're creating PDF pages, especially if you bring in a document your teacher has, and let's say it's like 30 pages long, then you can scroll through these thumbnails. You could see how if I've got a lot of them, I'll just add a few pages here. You can see how if I add a lot of pages that it'd be nice because you can just jump to page 5 real quick. So now I'm at page 5, and now I can do some writing on page 5. To just get rid of that page thumbnails, you just click that button again. And those are some of the basics of Notability. I do think it's an app you're going to use quite often in all of your classes. Again, you can annotate on it, write on it. I know that a lot of students have even used it to fill out a college application. So hopefully that's helpful for you, and that'll be it for this video.